The silent cry, the Discovery Captain. Sarah Chen rubbed her tired eyes as she stared at the holographic display floating above her command console. The Deep Space Monitoring Station, Omega-7, had been her home for the past 3 years, positioned at the edge of human-controlled space, where the void between stars seemed endless. Most days brought nothing but cosmic background radiation and the occasional merchant vessel requesting navigation assistance. This Tuesday morning in 2387 felt different. The signal detection array suddenly came alive with activity. Red warning. Lights flashed across multiple screens as the station's quantum receivers picked up something extraordinary. Not the usual electromagnetic chatter from distant pulsars, or the predictable patterns of known civilizations, but something else entirely. Something desperate. "Commander Chen, you need to see this." Lieutenant Torres called from the communication station, his voice tight with excitement and concern. "We're receiving what appears to be a distress signal from the Kepler 442 system. But ma'am, the frequency patterns are completely unknown. This isn't from any species in our databases." Sarah pushed herself away from her desk and floated across the zero-gravity command center with practiced ease. The artificial gravity generators had been down for maintenance all week, but the crew had adapted quickly. She anchored herself beside Torres and examined the scrolling data on his screens. The signal was weak, barely distinguishable from background noise, but it pulsed with an unmistakable rhythm. 3 long bursts, followed by 2 short ones, then a pause. Over and over, the pattern repeated with mechanical precision. "How long have we been receiving this?" Sarah asked, her military training already shifting her mind into tactical mode. "Approximately 18 hours, Commander. The signal strength suggests extreme distance, possibly from beyond our established contact zones. And ma'am, there's something else. The signal appears to be weakening. Whatever is transmitting, this may not have much power left." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine despite the station's regulated temperature. In the vastness of space, a dying distress signal often meant dying people. She activated her personal communicator with a quick gesture. "Dr. Rodriguez, report to the command center immediately. We may have a first contact situation." The translation DR, Marcus Rodriguez, arrived within minutes, his wild grey hair even more disheveled than usual. As Earth's leading xenolinguist and communication specialist, he had spent decades developing protocols for communicating with unknown alien species. His office on Omega-7 was filled with translation matrices, linguistic algorithms, and theoretical frameworks for dozens of possible alien communication methods. "Show me what we have," Marcus said, without preamble, pulling up a floating workstation beside the communications array. His fingers danced across holographic controls as he began running the signal through his sophisticated analysis programs. "The pattern is definitely artificial," he muttered, more to himself than to the others. "Not natural phenomena, but it's not following any known mathematical or linguistic structures from our first contact protocols." For the next 6 hours, Marcus worked with an intensity that amazed the entire command crew. He tried frequency modulation analysis, quantum harmonic interpretation, and even primitive mathematical progression theories. Nothing seemed to crack the code of the alien message. Then, just as Sarah was beginning to worry they might never understand the signal, Marcus suddenly straightened in his chair. His eyes widened with a mixture of excitement and horror. "Commander Chen," he said quietly, "I need you to contact Earth Defense Command immediately. This isn't just a distress signal, it's a countdown." Sarah felt her blood turn to ice. A countdown to what? Marcus turned his workstation screen toward her. Complex waveform patterns filled the display, but now she could see what he had discovered. The signal pulses weren't random. They were decreasing in duration with each repetition, following a precise mathematical sequence. Based on the degradation, rate, and the mathematical progression, I estimate this signal represents a species that has approximately 72 hours before whatever they're facing overwhelms them completely. Commander, this is a dying civilization calling out. To anyone who might be listening, they're not just asking for help, they're saying goodbye. The decision the emergency hyperspace communication link to Earth Defense Command crackled to life within 30 minutes. Admiral James Morrison's weathered face appeared on the main screen, his steel-gray eyes reflecting decades of military decision-making. Behind him, Sarah could see the bustling activity of Earth's primary military command center. Captain Chen, Dr. Rodriguez, Admiral Morrison nodded to each of them. I've reviewed your preliminary reports. Are you absolutely certain this signal represents an intelligent species in immediate danger? Dr. Rodriguez leaned forward, his usual academic demeanor replaced by urgent conviction. Admiral, I've run every verification protocol we have. The mathematical precision, the systematic degradation pattern, the consistent repetition frequency. This is definitely an artificial signal from an intelligent source. And sir, based on my calculations, they have less than 60 hours remaining. Sarah watched the Admiral's expression carefully. She had served under Morrison for 8 years and knew he was calculating risks, resources, and possibilities at light speed. The Kepler 442 system was over 200 light-years from Earth, at the absolute limit of their fastest ship's hyperspace capabilities. Admiral Sarah spoke carefully, with respect. Sir, we've never encountered a situation like this. An unknown species reaching out across the galaxy in their final hours. If we don't respond, we may never get another opportunity for first contact. And, more importantly, we might be their only hope. Admiral Morrison was quiet for long moments. Behind him, Sarah could see other officers gathering around monitoring stations, clearly aware that something significant was happening. Finally, the Admiral spoke. Captain Chen, how quickly can the EDF Aurora and the EDF Thunderbolt reach your position? Sarah's heart raced. The Aurora and Thunderbolt were Earth's fastest long-range vessels, equipped with the most advanced hyperspace drives in the human fleet. More importantly, they carried full diplomatic and first contact teams, along with substantial military capabilities. 18 hours at maximum burn, sir. Very well, Dr. Rodriguez. You'll transfer to the Aurora as senior xenolinguist for this mission. Captain Chen, you'll maintain station and continue monitoring the signal. If the pattern changes or stops entirely, you'll notify the fleet immediately. Admiral Morrison paused, his expression growing grave. People, I want you to understand something. We're about to commit significant resources to help a species we've never encountered, traveling to a system we've never explored, to face a threat we can't identify. This goes against every standard first contact protocol we've established. Sarah waited, knowing there was more. But, Admiral Morrison continued, in 2 centuries of space exploration, we've learned that the universe is vast and often hostile. If there's even a chance we can help preserve an intelligent species, then that's what humanity does. That's who we are. The fleet will depart for Kepler 442 in 20 hours. May God help us all. The preparation the next 18 hours transformed Deep Space Monitoring Station Omega 7 into a hub of frantic activity. The EDF Aurora and EDF Thunderbolt arrived precisely on schedule, their sleek hulls reflecting the distant stars as they positioned themselves near the monitoring station. Captain Alina Vasquez of the Aurora was a legend in Earth Defense Force circles. She had commanded first contact missions with 3 different alien species and had never lost a diplomatic encounter. Her counterpart, Captain David Park of the Thunderbolt, was equally respected for his tactical brilliance in deep space operations. Dr. Rodriguez spent his final hours on Omega-7 preparing comprehensive communication packages. He loaded every mathematical constant, scientific principle, and cultural artifact that might help establish peaceful contact with the unknown species. More importantly, he continued refining his translation of their distress signal, *. "I've made additional progress," he reported to the assembled senior officers. "The signal contains more information than just a countdown. There are embedded data patterns that appear to be coordinates, possibly indicating the location of survivors, or the source of their threat. And there's something else. In the final segment of each transmission cycle, there's a pattern that roughly translates to anyone listening or help if you can hear. This species is specifically hoping someone will receive and understand their message." Captain Vasquez studied the translation data carefully. "Dr. Rodriguez, do we have any indication of what they're facing? Any clue about the nature of their threat?" Marcus shook his head grimly. "Not directly, but the mathematical models suggest something systematic, something that's overwhelming their civilization in a methodical way. Not a natural disaster or single catastrophic event, but something that's spreading or consuming their society over time." Captain Park leaned forward. "Could we be walking into a war zone? Some kind of interspecies conflict?" "Possibly," Dr. Rodriguez admitted. "But Commander Park, the desperation in this signal is unmistakable. Whatever they're facing, they're losing. Badly. If we don't intervene, I believe this species will be extinct within the next 48 hours. First contact, perspective 218 light-years away, on the 4th planet of the Kepler 442 system." Kethver crouched in the ruins of what had once been the Great Library of Viridian. His elongated fingers, each ending in sensitive neural receptors, continued to tap out the distress signal on the emergency transmitter. For 6 days, he had maintained this vigil. Even as the city crumbled around him, the Villani were a peaceful species, evolved from tree-dwelling ancestors on a world of vast forests and crystal-clear rivers. Their society had achieved interplanetary travel 3 centuries ago and had been exploring their local star cluster for generations. They had always wondered if other intelligent life existed among the stars, but they had never encountered evidence of other civilizations until the swarm arrived. Kethver paused in his transmission to look through a gap in the library's damaged wall. The city of Viridian, once home to 12 million Villani, was now mostly silent. The beautiful spires of living crystal that had characterized their architecture lay shattered. The flowing waterways that had connected every district were choked with debris, and everywhere the grey biomatter that marked the swarm's presence crept across surfaces like a malevolent infection. Kethver, a weak voice called from the shadows behind him. Zorath, barely past her adult molt, crawled from her hiding place among the fallen archive crystals. Her usually lustrous blue-green skin had turned pale with exhaustion and fear. "The transmitter's power cells are nearly depleted. We have perhaps 2 more days of transmission capability." Kethver looked at the young engineer with deep sadness. Zarath represented the future of their species, one of only a few dozen Villani who had survived the initial swarm assault. Her brilliant mind had kept their small group alive for weeks, rigging power systems and communication equipment from salvaged materials. "Then we continue transmitting until the very end," Kethva replied gently. "Even if no one is listening, even if no one exists out there to hear us, we will not die in silence. We will tell the universe that the Vallani lived, that we built beautiful cities and composed flowing music and loved our children." Zareth moved closer to the transmitter, her neural receptors automatically interfacing with the device's control systems. Despite her youth, she understood their situation perfectly. The swarm was not merely destroying their civilization, it was consuming it, converting everything into biomass for its own expansion. "Kethva," she whispered, "do you really believe someone might be listening?" The older Vallani looked up at the stars, visible through the broken roof. Somewhere out there in the vast cosmos, did other voices sing? Did other minds dream? Did other hearts hope? "I believe," he said softly, "that in a universe vast enough to create us, it would be impossible for us to be alone." The threat revealed the hive mind swarm had no name for itself. Names were individual concepts, and it had abandoned individuality eons ago when countless species had been absorbed into its collective consciousness. It thought of itself simply as the inevitable future, the logical endpoint of biological evolution. The swarm had encountered the Vallani purely by accident. Its vast fleet of bioships had been drifting through the sector, consuming dead worlds and harvesting raw materials. When the Vallani's deep space exploration vessels had detected the fleet's presence, the Vallani had approached with scientific curiosity, broadcasting mathematical greetings and peaceful intentions. The swarm had responded by immediately analyzing their technology, their biology, and their potential usefulness. The Vallani possessed sophisticated crystal growing techniques that could be adapted for bioship construction. Their neural receptor networks showed promising integration possibilities. Their peaceful nature meant they would offer minimal resistance. Once the absorption process began, the invasion of the Vallani worlds had been methodical and efficient. The swarm's bioships had deployed atmospheric processors that filled the air with microscopic conversion organisms. These organisms bonded with any organic matter they encountered, slowly transforming it into swarm biomass. Vallani who breathed the infected air found their cellular structure gradually changing, their individual consciousness being absorbed into the hive mind collective. The process was designed to be slow, enough to allow the swarm to study each species thoroughly before final integration. The Vallani had proved more resistant than expected, their neural receptors creating natural barriers against the conversion process. But resistance only delayed the inevitable. Now, as the swarm's bioships orbited the dying world of Viridian, the collective consciousness calculated that total absorption would be complete within approximately 47 hours. The handful of surviving Vallani were trapped in scattered locations, their desperate transmissions having no measurable impact on the final outcome. The hive mind had encountered over 4,000 species in its expansion across the galaxy. None had ever received outside assistance. The cosmos was vast and empty, filled with isolated civilizations that lived and died alone among the stars. Hope against hope back in the ruins of the Great Library. Kethva continued his methodical transmission. Routine, 3 long pulses, 2 short ones, then the embedded coordinate data and the final plea for help. He had been sending this message for so long that the rhythm had become like breathing, an automatic function that continued even when his conscious mind wandered. Zareth had managed to rig additional power, cells from other parts of the library, extending their transmission capability by perhaps another day. She worked with quiet efficiency, her neural receptors interfacing with salvaged equipment to squeeze every possible watt from their deteriorating power systems. "Kethva," she said during one of their brief rest periods, "if someone did receive our signal, how long would it take them to reach us?" Kethva considered the question carefully. The Villani had achieved faster than light travel, but their technology was limited compared to what they imagined might be possible for older, more advanced civilizations. If another species exists within 50 light-years and possesses advanced propulsion technology, perhaps they could reach us within days. If they exist within 100 light-years, perhaps weeks. Beyond that, he gestured helplessly at the stars. Beyond that, they would arrive to find only the swarm, Zarath finished. Quietly, they returned to their work in contemplative silence. Neither wanted to voice the growing certainty that they were truly alone, that their signal was disappearing into an empty cosmos where no other voices sang. But still, they continued transmitting. Still, they maintained hope against hope that, somewhere among the stars, someone was listening, above them, unseen and undetected. The first hyperspace distortions began to ripple through the fabric of space-time as something impossibly fast approached the Kepler 442 system. When warriors fall from heaven, the Arrival, the EDF Aurora and EDF Thunderbolt dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system with a brilliant flash of displaced energy. Captain Alina Vasquez felt the familiar sensation of her inner ear adjusting as the ship's artificial gravity stabilized after the hyperspace transition. Around her, the Aurora's bridge crew immediately began running system checks and sensor sweeps. "Status report," Vasquez commanded, settling into her captain's chair as holographic displays activated throughout the bridge. "Hyperspace drive, nominal. All systems green," reported Lieutenant Commander Hayes from the engineering station. "We've arrived precisely at the calculated coordinates, approximately 18 billion kilometers from the fourth planet. Sensor sweep shows multiple artificial structures in the inner system, called Tactical Officer Jong. Captain, I'm reading what appears to be a large fleet of unknown vessels in orbit around the fourth planet. Configuration and design completely outside our databases." Dr. Rodriguez, who had transferred to the Aurora for the mission, was already deep in analysis of the continued alien distress signal. "Captain, the signal is much stronger now, and I'm detecting additional communication frequencies. The species is definitely located on the fourth planet, but—" He paused, his expression growing troubled. "Captain, I'm also detecting what appear to be atmospheric modifications. The planet's air composition is changing rapidly." Captain David Park's voice crackled through the ship-to-ship communication system from the Thunderbolt. "Alina, my tactical sensors are showing approximately 60 unknown vessels in orbit. They appear to be of biological construction, not mechanical. And Alina, they're massive. The smallest vessel I'm detecting is over 2 kilometers in length." Vasquez felt her pulse quicken. 60 unknown ships of enormous size, orbiting a planet where an alien species was sending desperate distress signals. The situation was clearly more complex and dangerous than anyone had anticipated. "Dr. Rodriguez, are you receiving any communications from the orbital fleet? Any attempt at contact or warning?" Marcus worked frantically at his translation systems, running every frequency through his linguistic analysis programs. "Negative, Captain. The orbital vessels are maintaining complete communication silence, but I am detecting massive data streams. Between them, some form of high-frequency information exchange that suggests a coordinated group intelligence. Lieutenant Commander Hayes suddenly looked up from her sensor station, her face pale. "Captain, you need to see this. I'm detecting energy signatures on the planet's surface that match the biomatter readings from the orbital fleet. Whatever those ships are doing, they're actively modifying the planet below." First Strike Captain Vasquez made the decision that would be studied in military academies for generations to come. Despite facing unknown technology, unknown capabilities, and unknown intentions, she chose to act based on a single principle: the alien distress signal was still transmitting, which meant survivors were still alive on the planet below. "All stations, battle alert," she commanded. "Captain Park, form up for coordinated assault on the orbital fleet. Dr. Rodriguez, continue attempting communication with both the orbital vessels and the planet's surface. All other personnel, prepare for combat against unknown hostiles." The Aurora and Thunderbolt accelerated toward the inner system, their fusion drives pushing them to maximum sublight velocity. As they approached, the alien bioships finally responded to their presence. The hive mind collective had never encountered a species that arrived in response to another species' distress calls. The concept was so foreign to their collective experience that it took precious seconds to analyze and understand what was happening. Two small mechanical vessels, clearly of non-Villani origin, were approaching with obvious hostile intent. "Captain," Tactical Officer Jong called out, "the alien vessels are moving to intercept. I'm reading massive energy buildups across their fleet." The first swarm bioship that engaged the human vessels learned why Earth Defense Force crews trained in zero-gravity combat maneuvers for 6 hours every day. Captain Park executed a spiral dodge pattern that brought the Thunderbolt underneath the alien vessel's firing arc, while simultaneously launching a spread of quantum torpedoes at its underbelly. The bioship's hull evolved to resist conventional energy weapons and space debris, had never encountered weapons designed specifically to disrupt molecular bonds at the quantum level. The torpedoes tore through its organic armor like paper, causing massive internal decompression that sent the creature ship tumbling out of control. "Direct hit," Park's voice echoed through the communication link. "Alina, whatever these things are, they're not invulnerable. Our quantum weapons are highly effective against their organic hulls." Captain Vasquez smiled grimly as she watched the tactical display show the first alien vessel's energy signature going dark. "All ships, focus fire on their propulsion sections. These are biological entities, which means they have vulnerable points just like any living creature." Unexpected tactics, the hive mind collective had absorbed the military knowledge of dozens of species over its long expansion across the galaxy. It understood fleet formations, energy weapon exchanges, and territorial combat. What it did not understand was why these two small vessels were attacking with such reckless abandon, employing tactics that seemed designed more to cause chaos than to achieve strategic objectives. The human ships moved in patterns that defied conventional military logic. They separated when they should have stayed together for mutual defense. They charged directly at superior numbers when they should have retreated, and they targeted random vessels across the fleet instead of focusing on command ships or defensive positions. What the hive mind failed to understand was that human military doctrine had evolved from centuries of warfare against other humans, where psychological impact and unpredictability were often more valuable than superior firepower. Captains Vasquez and Park were not trying to defeat the alien fleet through conventional means. They were trying to create enough confusion and damage to force the fleet to divide its attention between the orbital battle and whatever was happening on the planet below. David. Captain Vasquez called through the ship-to-ship link as the Aurora rolled through a complex, evasive maneuver that brought its main guns to bear on 3 different bioships simultaneously. I need you to break through their orbital line and get close enough to the planet for transport operations. Understood, Park replied, his voice tight with concentration as he piloted the Thunderbolt through a narrow gap between 2 massive alien vessels. Alina, once I'm in transporter range, how many people are we trying to extract? Dr. Rodriguez looked up from his communication station, his face shining with excitement. Captain, I've established preliminary contact with the survivors on the surface. They're transmitting in mathematical sequences, and I'm beginning to understand their language structure. Based on their responses, I estimate fewer than 50. Individuals remain alive, concentrated in approximately 6 locations across the planet. Ground insertion, the Thunderbolt's transporter chief, Master Sergeant Lisa Park, no relation to the captain, had performed combat insertions on 17 different worlds. During her career with Earth Defense Force, she had transported troops into desert warfare, jungle conflicts, and zero-atmosphere asteroid battles. She had never attempted to transport people off a planet that was actively being consumed by hostile alien biomatter. Coordinates locked, she reported to Captain Park. Sir, the atmospheric readings are highly unusual. The air down there is thick with microscopic organisms I can't identify. Recommend full environmental suits for any away team. Captain Vasquez's voice came through the communication link. Sergeant Park, you'll be transporting up survivors, not sending down a team. Dr. Rodriguez has established that the alien species requires a nitrogen-oxygen atmosphere similar to Earth. Standard, so our ship's environment should be compatible. The first transport activation brought a wave of relief and terror that echoed through both human vessels. The transporter beam locked onto the coordinates provided by the surface survivors and successfully materialized to alien beings on the Thunderbolt's transporter pad. Kethfa and Zareth found themselves suddenly surrounded by bright lights and strange mechanical sounds. The young engineer's neural receptors automatically began analyzing their new environment, while Kethfa tried to process the impossible reality that someone had actually heard their distress signal. Dr. Rodriguez was waiting for them with a hastily constructed translation interface. His first words to another intelligent alien species were carefully chosen. We received your signal. We came to help. Are there others? Zareth's neural receptors interfaced with the translation device, and her response came through clearly in accented but understandable English. You are real. You actually came. Yes, there are others, scattered across the planet. But the swarm ships will follow you when you leave. They will consume your worlds as they have consumed ours. The meeting, the formal first contact between humanity and the Villani, took place in the Aurora's main conference room while both ships continued to engage the swarm fleet in orbit. It was hardly the diplomatic setting that had been envisioned in first contact protocols, but Dr. Rodriguez was determined to establish proper communication despite the circumstances. Kethfa stood nearly 7 feet tall, his elongated limbs giving him an elegant appearance that reminded several human crew members of classical artwork depicting angels. His neural receptors, which had initially alarmed the human medical team, proved to be sophisticated biological interfaces that allowed him to communicate directly with electronic systems. Zeret H, despite her youth and obvious exhaustion, immediately impressed the human engineering staff with her intuitive understanding of their technology. Within minutes of her arrival, she was helping to optimize the Aurora's sensor systems to better detect swarm biosignatures on the planet below, Dr. Rodriguez, Kethva said through the translation interface. Your species has traveled very far to answer our call. This demonstrates a concept we had hoped existed among the stars. The idea that intelligent beings might help one another across the void. But you must understand what you face. The swarm does not negotiate, does not retreat, does not show mercy. It exists only to consume and expand. Dr. Rodriguez leaned forward, his academic curiosity overriding the dangerous situation they faced. Kethva, how long has the swarm been active in this region of space? Are there other species that have faced this threat? The tall alien's neural receptors flickered with what the translation system interpreted as deep sadness. The swarm has consumed everything in its path for longer than our recorded history. We have found evidence of dozens of civilizations that once existed in nearby star systems. Now there is nothing left of them but absorbed biomatter and empty worlds. Captain Vasquez entered the conference room, still wearing her combat uniform, her expression grim. Kethva, Zaroth, we've successfully transported 43 of your people from the surface. But our ships can't hold out against the swarm fleet indefinitely. Do you have any knowledge of their weaknesses? Any technology that might help us fight them more effectively? Zaroth's neural receptors interfaced with the ship's computer systems as she formulated her response. Captain Vasquez, the swarm's greatest strength is also its greatest weakness. The bioships are all connected through a shared consciousness. If that connection could be disrupted, combined strategy, the plan that emerged from the combined human-Volani strategic session was ambitious, dangerous, and completely unprecedented. Dr. Rodriguez would work with Zaroth to develop a communication virus, a carefully crafted information package that could be transmitted directly into the swarm's collective consciousness network. Meanwhile, both human ships would coordinate with the surviving Volani to identify and target key nodes in the biofleet. The concept is theoretically sound, Zaroth explained as she worked alongside the Aurora's senior engineer to modify their communication systems. The swarm maintains constant data streams between all vessels. If we can inject conflicting information into their network, their collective consciousness should experience what you might call confusion or indecision. Lieutenant Commander Hayes looked skeptical. Zeret H., you're talking about performing psychological warfare against a hive mind that has conquered dozens of species. How do we know this won't just make them angry? Kethva, who had been quietly observing the technical discussions, spoke up. Commander Hayes, the swarm does not experience anger as individual beings do, but it can experience inefficiency, conflicting priorities, and system overload. If Zaroth's plan works, we may be able to force the collective consciousness to focus on resolving internal conflicts instead of maintaining the attack. Captain Park's voice came through the ship-to-ship communication link. Alina, I hate to interrupt the strategy session, but we're running low on quantum torpedoes, and the swarm is adapting to our attack patterns. If we're going to try this communication virus approach, we need to do it soon. The turning point, the moment that changed the course of the battle, came when Zaroth successfully interfaced her neural receptors directly with the Aurora's main communication array. Her consciousness evolved specifically for complex technical interfaces, merged temporarily with the ship's computer systems to create a hybrid intelligence, capable of crafting the perfect information weapon. Dr. Rodriguez monitored the process carefully, amazed by the sophistication of Volani biotechnology. Zaroth, I'm reading massive data processing rates through your neural network. Are you in any danger from this level of interface activity? The young Villani engineer's response came through both the translation system and directly through the ship's communication network simultaneously. Dr. Rodriguez, I am accessing information structures that the swarm has never encountered. Human mathematical concepts, artistic expressions, philosophical frameworks. The collective consciousness is not equipped to process truly alien ways of thinking. Captain Vasquez watched the tactical display as something unprecedented began to happen in the swarm fleet. Individual bioships started deviating from their coordinated attack patterns. Some vessels began firing on each other. Others simply stopped moving entirely, as if their controlling intelligence had suddenly become paralyzed by indecision. It's working, she breathed in amazement. David, are you seeing this? The alien fleet is breaking apart. Captain Parks' excited voice echoed through the bridge. Alina, not just breaking apart. Some of the bioships are actually retreating from the system entirely. I think Zareth's virus is causing different parts of the collective consciousness to reach different conclusions about their mission priorities. But the most remarkable moment came when the largest swarm bioship, clearly the fleet command vessel, began transmitting on the same frequency that the Villani had used for their distress signal. Dr. Rodriguez's translation systems went wild, trying to process what appeared to be the first independent communication ever received from the Hive Mind Collective. Captain, he said in wonder, I think part of the swarm is trying to ask us questions. The virus hasn't just disrupted their coordination. It's actually created curiosity within their collective consciousness. A new alliance, 6 hours after the human fleet had first engaged the swarm bioships. An unprecedented ceasefire took effect in the Kepler 442 system. The surviving swarm vessels had withdrawn to the outer system boundaries, their collective consciousness apparently struggling to process the new concepts that had been introduced through Zerath's communication virus. Captain Vasquez stood in the Aurora's main conference room, looking out at the stars through the transparent aluminum view. Around the table, human officers sat beside Villani survivors, planning not just the immediate evacuation of the remaining population, but the longer-term implications of first contact between 3 intelligent species. Kethva, she said quietly, your people's distress signal has changed everything, not just for your species, but for mine as well. We came here thinking we might save one civilization, but we may have accidentally started the galaxy's first interspecies alliance. The tall Villani nodded gravely. Captain Vasquez, the swarm has consumed countless worlds across this region of space, but if your communication virus technique can be refined and distributed, other species might have a chance to defend themselves. The age of isolated civilizations may finally be ending.